For years, my seed starting setup has looked like this. It is an absolute mess. It is cobbled together shop lights and wires and timers and boxes, and it works, but it's pretty complicated and it also isn't very pretty. And so today I'm going to compare my old setup to my new Vego all-in-one setup. Just as a disclaimer, they did send this to me in exchange for the review. However, there's nothing saying that I have to give them a positive review. So I'm going to be going over the real pros and cons of this, and I'm also going to go over who I think that this would be good for and who I think that this would not be good for. Putting together a grow light setup in general can be pretty difficult, especially if you're a beginner. There are a lot of decisions to make. Specifically, the lights, I think, are one of the hardest things for people to figure out. You have to get very specific lights with very specific specifications, and then you have to actually find those lights out somewhere to buy. A lot of especially cheaper lights that are marketed as grow lights are not actually good for being grow lights. And so especially on the cheaper end of the spectrum, you do have to be careful what you're getting. And then that's not to mention getting the shelves and getting the timers and the wires and everything just all put together. It is a lot. And so one of the big reasons that Vego built this system in the first place is to help solve that complexity. All the decisions are already made for you. It all comes together. All you have to do is assemble it, and then you know that it's going to be correct. My old setup actually took a fair bit of trial and error to get right, even though I went into it knowing what I needed out of it. The first set of shop lights that I got for this, they actually weren't even built to be freestanding. They were built to go into a fixture, and so I actually have used the cardboard packaging to make like a little shade for it and direct the light downwards towards the plants. And eventually I got some slightly better shop lights, so now I have a lot of lights, but even that wasn't enough. And so also I have used a lot of desk lamps to supplement the light. And then of course at this point the wiring became an absolute mess. I have a power strip, I have actually a multi-outlet extension cord that I have then had to plug into the power strip, and then all of that has been plugged into a Wi-Fi timer, which honestly, it's good when it's good, and when it's not, it's really, really hard to troubleshoot. The shelves are also pretty immovable, like they are technically adjustable if I lift this up and move the little wedges, but the effort that goes into moving these shelves up and down, especially with the wiring, they are essentially fixed in place at this point. Also, early on in this setup, I didn't realize that I would have to elevate the seedlings even closer to the light in order to not get very leggy seedlings, and I did in fact end up with leggy seedlings that first year. And some of them can recover from that, like tomatoes, but other ones like my lettuces, they were never quite right because of it. And so this was another learning curve and another hassle, another problem that I had to troubleshoot with this setup. Even right now, with the way that it is, with all the troubleshooting that I've done, I still sometimes end up with leggy seedlings because the lighting isn't perfect. And sometimes the seedlings that are on the outer edges have to bend in towards the middle. And that's just kind of how it is, and that is what I've put up with. So let's talk about the new setup and see what is better and also what is not better about it. All right, starting with the pros. So like I said earlier, it is an all-in-one setup, and you don't have to make any decisions about what lights to buy, what rack to buy. It all comes included, and so that is already a mental load off. And by all included, I don't just mean the rack and the lights. There is also the timer built into every single light on its own, so you don't have to worry about buying a separate timer, and you don't have to worry about keeping the entire shelf on the same schedule like I do, or buying multiple timers. And then the wiring situation is so nice. Like already included, they have little clips to help you organize your wiring and make sure that everything is nice and neat and clean and you don't have a pile of wires that you have to deal with. Next, I have to say I am super impressed with the quality of this. The build quality is just like far and beyond what I expected from a product like this. It is so easy to put together. Everything is really well labeled. And then also it's just really convenient to kind of change around. So for example, the lights here, they are magnetic. So I can just pop them on, pop them back up. I can move it forward, I can move it back. It's so convenient. It's so seamless. I really, really like that. Another thing that I really like about it is that it is pretty. My old setup, not very pretty. New setup, very, very sleek. And that is really nice to have something that actually looks nice in your home, especially for me, who I'm basically using it year round. Something else that I really like is that the shelves are adjustable. So each shelf, it just lifts right out, and you can see it's got the light attached to the bottom of it, but I can easily just move it up a row if I want. And because the light is attached to it, because the wiring is so sleek, it's actually just that easy to raise and lower your shelves. So these seedlings right here, they were getting a little too tall, they were touching the shelf, and now I can just raise up the light and these seedlings suddenly have a little bit more room. So something else that I really like is that each individual light has individual settings that you can adjust based on what you're growing. So whether you're growing microgreens or starting seeds or trying to keep an indoor lettuce garden going, there are settings for you. And again, it takes out a lot of the guesswork because each setting, there's just a leafy green setting, there's a seeds setting, there's a microgreen setting, and you just turn on the setting and it just does what's best for those plants. It'll change the wavelength a little bit, and it'll also change how long it is on during the day. And especially for a beginner, that is really, really nice. You don't have to think about it, it just does it. All right, and the last thing that I find incredibly convenient about this whole setup is that it is on wheels. And so when I get to the point where I need to be hardening off my tomatoes and peppers, what I have done in the past is I have lifted every single tray, taken it outside to the porch in the morning, and then in the evening lift every single tray and take it back inside. And with this, I can just load all my trays onto here and I can roll the entire setup out to the porch. And then if I need to unload them from there, I can do that, but that is still so much more convenient than what I have done in the past. All right, so I've lowered this shelf back down to where it was to show you the major con, in my opinion, about this whole setup. It's like probably the biggest concern that I have is you see how all of these are bending inwards towards the light. The light does not go the full length of the size tray. And these are not Vego trays, but these are the exact same size as a Vego tray. And so the light from here isn't quite reaching all the way into the corners. And so everything has to kind of bend in to get to the light, especially once it gets to be this size. And so like I showed you, you can actually just move the light up like that. And now there is more room, which is really nice for taller plants. But I think the options of the distance here are not as many as I would really like to have, because this double distance I think is too much and will contribute to a little bit of legginess in these plants. I did do a test to see just how powerful the lights are and whether or not that distance would actually make a difference, because if you have high enough lumens, which is enough actual photons coming out of the light, if it's really, really bright, then you can have your seedlings farther away from the light and they won't get as leggy. And so these two right here, so these ones were actually much closer to the light and these ones were farther from the light. And I think you can see the difference in the height of them. The ones that were closer to the light are shorter and the ones that were farther from the light are more stretched out. And like I said, for tomatoes and even peppers, they can absolutely recover from legginess. It's really not a big deal, but some other plants are really not so good at recovering from this. And so keeping them too far away from the light is still going to produce leggy seedlings. You can, of course, remedy the situation with books and boxes, which is what I've been doing with my old setup, but of course that takes a little bit of the ease out of having this setup in the first place. All right, and the final con, in my opinion, is the price. This may or may not matter to you, but to me, it matters a little bit because I'm not exactly high income. This is the 4-tier setup, and on Vego's website right now, it's about $400 with the $10 off coupon that I have available. If you decide to go this route, that is in the description, that would bring it to like $390, right? And then this setup that I spent a long time cobbling together from a lot of different places, between the wire rack itself, the 2 sets of grow lights, and the Wi-Fi timer, that comes out to about $270 that I spent on this setup. So getting it all in one like this is going to run you about $100 extra than what this setup cost me. And to be honest, I bought the lights one set a couple years ago, and then the other set maybe like 4 years ago. And I know prices are constantly going up on stuff, so hard to say if you would actually be able to get it at the same price today. So there is a price jump for sure, and if you put in the time and effort, you can get it cheaper. And this is more expensive. It's also more of an investment if you want to get a larger model. They do have much larger models than this. And this kind of brings me to who this is good for and who I do not recommend this for. So the people that I would recommend this for is if you are a beginner, if you're in your first few years of gardening, maybe this is your first year starting seeds, or maybe you tried to start seeds last year just using the window, which is what I did my first year, and that did not work out very well. And you're looking for an actual legitimate seed starting setup. I think that this is a really good option for you. Like I said, it takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. I have tested it. I know it's going to be good for you, especially on a smaller scale. If you're in an apartment, you don't have a lot of room. I think that this is a really, really good option for you. On the other hand, I don't think that this will be very good for you if you have a bigger garden and are a more experienced gardener. So if you're more experienced, you probably have time and energy to put into making decisions about lights. And also this setup is just bigger. I can fit up to 9 trays on this. Granted, I have to put them sideways, and then the light on the edges still isn't reaching the edges of my trays, which is the similar problem here. But I can technically fit 9 trays on this, and this one only fits 4 trays. And so if you have the bigger garden, then this isn't just going to work out for you. However, Vego does offer something called the Ultimate Series, which is something that I would be very interested in as an experienced gardener with a very large garden. It is capacity for 12 full-size trays, which would be even bigger than this. And also it is set up to have the lighting work out for 12 trays as opposed to my setup here. The shelves are deeper, so you can put all the trays in vertically, and that sounds really nice. The lights are also different lights than what comes on these smaller ones. They are kind of big, like shop lights, and so I think that they would probably be less prone to this issue of not getting the light quite all the way out to the edges. But to be fair to them, I haven't been able to create even my own setup that doesn't have that issue with the light on the edges of the trays. So again, this setup isn't perfect, but if frustration, overwhelm of trying to build your own setup or even search for a cheaper setup is what's going to stop you from actually starting seeds this year, then I would rather you get this and be able to start your seeds and be able to keep moving on your gardening journey than just sit in that overwhelm and feel like you're not going to go anywhere. I also do want to say, full transparency, if you do use the coupon down below, I will get a commission for the sale. And I just want you to know that I don't need the commission from the sales so badly that I am going to sit here and lie to you about these products in order to make the sale. It's really, really important to me that I give you accurate information so that you can make your own decisions. And then if you do decide that the product is something that you want, I would really appreciate it if I could make the commission, because that does help me in the long run. However, if this product isn't for you, absolutely no hard feelings. And if this style of really honest review is something that you like, I do have more reviews. I'll link a lot of them down below. I review a lot of raised beds, especially those metal ones, again, that the Vego company makes, as well as a bunch of other different brands. I also review some indoor composters, the ones that like take away the smell and kind of give you compost pre-made that could go into your garden. If you're curious about those, I'll leave links to those reviews as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.